The courtroom fell into stunned silence. Every eye was locked on Elon Musk as he stood, uninvited, beside the defendant's bench. The bailiff had already stepped forward to intercept him, but Musk raised a calm hand without turning. His presence alone sent ripples through the room. Even those who hadn't recognized him at first now sat up straighter, phones already sliding out of pockets. "This court should be about justice," Elon said, his voice steady, loud enough to carry through the chamber, but calm, deliberate. He held up a small flash drive between two fingers, no larger than a key fob, yet it somehow felt as heavy as a gavel. Judge Frank Caprio leaned forward behind the bench. The light humor he usually carried into court was gone from his eyes. His tone dropped, low and authoritative. "Mr. Musk," he said slowly, "you are out of line." Gasps stirred across the gallery. A whisper echoed near the back. "Is that really him?" Others craned their necks, trying to get a better look. Courtroom regulars knew something was off. This wasn't part of any docket they'd seen. But Musk didn't flinch. His eyes remained locked on the judge, calm and defiant. "With all due respect, Your Honor," he said, "if you don't want to hear the truth, that's your choice. But these people deserve to see it." He walked toward the courtroom's projector system, with the quiet confidence of a man who had walked into boardrooms and Senate hearings alike. In one swift motion, he inserted the flash drive into the port. The monitors mounted on the walls blinked, and then came to life. Lines of code, bank records, transaction histories, names, screens filled with document scans, digital trails, wire transfer logs, and redacted memos. At first, it seemed like gibberish, but soon, the courtroom realized what they were looking at. Musk clicked through each screen methodically. There were emails from city officials, contract bids marked pre-approved before applications were even submitted, donation ledgers connecting public grant committees to private firms, and most damning of all, correspondence showing how the grant for Ana Delgado's safety sensor project had been redirected. Not because it was flawed, but because a real estate lobbyist had made a better offer. "This is what kept Ana from getting the funding," Elon said, gesturing to the young woman at the defendant's table. "Her technology could have saved lives, but they shut her out for money." Judge Caprio's lips tightened. His hands clutched the bench with a tension the courtroom had never seen before. For decades, he had ruled fairly over small infractions, traffic violations, parking tickets, school zone citations, but never had his courtroom been turned into a live wire of political scandal and financial exposure. Then Elon opened one final file, and everything changed. It was an email dated over a decade ago, a forwarded message detailing a donation made to an old judicial scholarship fund in Rhode Island, Caprio's own initiative for underprivileged students. On the surface, it seemed benign, even noble. But the trail behind it led to Liberty Vanguard, a political dark money group now under federal scrutiny. The implication hit hard. Caprio stared at the screen. His name, his signature, there in black and white. His expression shifted, not to anger, but something heavier. Shock, betrayal, a memory unraveling. Then, slowly, without a word, Judge Frank Caprio rose from his seat. The room froze. Even Elon paused. Caprio looked at no one. Not the defendant. Not Musk. Not even the bailiff who instinctively took a step toward him. He turned away from the bench, walked down the side aisle, and disappeared through the rear courtroom door. The heavy wood doors clicked shut behind him, and the room erupted. Reporters shot up from their seats. The bailiff's voice cracked as he tried to restore order. A woman near the front gasped audibly. "He walked out?" People were on their feet. Phones recorded everything. Others just stared at the empty bench, mouths slightly open, unable to believe what they had just seen. Elon didn't speak. He removed the flash drive, placed it gently on the defense table beside Ana Delgado, and stepped away. His part was done. Ana, still clutching her parking citation, looked around in disbelief. Her 10-minute court appointment had just turned into a national event. Everyone had come for a parking ticket hearing, a small case, a light moment with Judge Caprio. Maybe a funny remark, a reduced fine. Instead, they got a front-row seat to a scandal unraveling in real time. A billionaire calling out corruption. A judge, known for his warmth and wisdom, walking away mid-trial. And a young woman's fight for justice suddenly given a voice louder than she ever imagined. What could make America's most compassionate judge abandon his bench mid-trial? What truth did Elon Musk just expose that left even Judge Frank Caprio speechless? Stay tuned. Comment where you're watching from. And don't forget to subscribe, because what happens next will shake everything you thought you knew about this courtroom. Earlier that morning, the air in the courtroom had been calm, even warm with laughter. The kind of morning that made this courthouse feel less like a place of judgment and more like a community gathering space. Sunlight poured through the tall windows. A few people in the gallery were sipping coffee. A child giggled as she sat on her mother's lap, swinging her legs. The defendant, a soft-spoken woman named Ana Delgado, had just entered. She moved quietly, clutching a wrinkled parking citation in one hand and a notepad covered in sketches and circuit diagrams in the other. She wore jeans smudged with oil, an MIT hoodie under a worn trench coat, and black sneakers with one sole half detached. A messenger bag with computer parts and wires peeking out swung at her side. Judge Caprio adjusted his glasses as he looked down at her file, the corner of his mouth twitching with amusement. "Ana Delgado," he said with a grin. "Robotics engineer? You come here to fix the parking meters?" A ripple of laughter moved through the courtroom. Ana smiled shyly, brushing a loose curl behind her ear. "Not unless they run on Python, Your Honor." The judge chuckled, leaning back in his chair. "If they did, you'd probably have them doing my job by now." More laughter followed. Even the bailiff cracked a grin. Ana's shoulders relaxed just slightly, though she still clutched the ticket like it might fly away. "You're from Newark?" Judge Caprio asked, flipping through her paperwork. "Long drive for a court date. What brings you all the way down here?" "I've been installing sensor prototypes at a community shelter in South Providence," she explained. "We're testing early fire detection modules for low-income housing. I guess I left the van parked too long outside the testing site. Got hit with the street sweeping ticket." Caprio raised an eyebrow. "So, you're building something that could literally save lives, and while you're doing that, you get fined for trying to keep people safe?" Ana gave a half laugh. "That's about the size of it, Your Honor." He shook his head with a smile, though there was a flicker of thought behind his eyes now. "Well, it wouldn't be Providence if we didn't slap a $60 ticket on someone doing something good." The gallery chuckled again. Ana smiled more freely now, the judge's humor clearly putting her at ease. Caprio looked down at the citation. "Street sweeping zone, East Elmhurst, Tuesday morning. Says here you were there for 4 hours?" "I didn't mean to be," Ana said quickly. "I was inside the shelter. The residents wanted to see how the modules worked, and, well, time got away from me." "What kind of modules are these?" Caprio asked, sounding genuinely curious. "They detect toxic smoke particles and heat changes in older buildings," Ana explained. "They're low-cost and easy to install. Me and a few friends from MIT designed them for communities with little fire protection infrastructure." Caprio nodded, clearly impressed. "You built that?" "We're still testing. Grants are hard to come by," she admitted. "Most of them go to big companies with polished proposals." He leaned back again, rubbing his chin thoughtfully. You ever think of just writing a boring proposal with a lot of buzzwords and no real impact? That seems to work better these days. Anna smiled again, more knowingly. We tried, but we figured saving lives was a better pitch. The judge smiled, but then, for a brief second, his eyes narrowed, flicking to something behind Anna, toward the gallery door. And that's when it happened. The large oak doors at the back of the courtroom creaked open, and heads turned. Murmurs followed. In stepped a man no one expected to see in a local courtroom. Elon Musk. No entourage, no announcement. Just a calm, focused walk down the center aisle. The bailiff took a step forward, confused. Anna turned slightly, her face tightening in confusion. Even Caprio looked momentarily unsure, rising slightly from his seat. "Elon Musk?" he asked, his voice tight with surprise. Elon gave a nod, but said nothing. He continued forward until he reached Anna's side, then slowly reached into his coat and revealed the small flash drive. And just like that, the warm laughter of the morning gave way to a cold, electric tension. Something was about to happen. Something big. But no one, not even Judge Frank Caprio, was prepared for what came next. Judge Frank Caprio leaned back in his chair, peering over his glasses as he reviewed the citation. The courtroom was filled with quiet murmurs and the distant shuffle of papers. A cool breeze fluttered through the high windows. He looked up with a familiar half-smile and asked, "All right, Ms. Delgado, you're here for parking in a no-standing zone. Let me guess, quick coffee run?" Ana Delgado, standing nervously before the bench, let out a quick breath through her nose and shook her head. "Actually, no, Your Honor," she replied, her voice polite but firm. "I was at City Hall. I parked there because I was running late to a municipal tech pitch. My lab's trying to get funding to install AI sensor grids in low-income housing, things like fire detection, CO2 alerts, structural stress warnings, life-saving stuff." Caprio raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "That sounds a lot more important than coffee." There were a few chuckles from the gallery, and Anna allowed herself a small, fleeting smile. The judge glanced down again. "And the sign said, 'No standing'?" "Yes, sir," she nodded. "I knew it wasn't allowed. I thought I had 10 minutes. I left my hazard lights on, hoping that might signal I'd be right back." She sighed and added, "That was a dumb move, I know. I just didn't want to miss the pitch. It was our last chance this quarter." The judge tilted his head. "Hazard lights," he said, his tone playful. "That's what we call the magic excuse button in Providence." The courtroom burst into light laughter. Even Anna laughed, loosening the tightness in her shoulders. There was something disarming about Judge Caprio's warmth, how he could turn a courtroom into a place of conversation, not condemnation. He chuckled again and asked, "So, what happened in the pitch?" Anna hesitated, her expression falling. She looked down at her hands for a beat before answering. "We didn't get the grant," she said softly. "They told us the project lacked real-world feasibility, said it wasn't scalable with current infrastructure. But the same system is already being used in São Paulo. It's saving lives in favelas with no formal fire services." Caprio frowned slightly. "That's discouraging, especially when it sounds like your work is already making an impact." He tapped the bench with his finger, thinking, "I hope you're not giving up on it." Anna straightened, and her voice carried new resolve. "No, Your Honor, not a chance. I've seen too many families suffer because a smoke alarm didn't go off. I've watched mothers carry kids out of smoke-filled stairwells, coughing, crying. I grew up in that kind of building. I know what it's like." There was a long pause. Caprio studied her with softened eyes. "You remind me of my mother," he said with a wry grin. "Stubborn in all the right ways." The courtroom chuckled again, but this time the laughter was more thoughtful than amused. Anna smiled, but didn't respond. The memories behind her words seemed to hang in the air. The judge leaned forward slightly, his expression shifting from casual to considerate. "You said you grew up in a building like that?" he asked gently. Anna nodded. "Yes. Ironically, a few blocks from here. Triple-decker. No sprinkler system. Ancient electrical wiring. My older brother, he was 10, woke us all up one night when the hallway light shorted and caught fire. We made it out. Barely. But the family upstairs didn't." The room quieted. Even the shuffling stopped. The child in the back of the courtroom stopped swinging her legs. Caprio exhaled slowly, then sat back in his chair, the gravity of her words settling deep in the room. "That must have been hard," he said. "It's why I do this work," Anna said. "I couldn't save them then, but I can save others now. These systems cost pennies per square foot. It just takes someone in a decision-making seat to care." Caprio looked away for a moment, eyes scanning the rows of people sitting silently in the gallery, then back at her. "It sounds like you care enough for everyone else who doesn't." There was a beat of silence before he leaned over and said, more softly now, "You know, I've heard a lot of excuses in this courtroom, some good, some questionable. But I think this is the first time someone broke a parking rule while trying to save lives." A warm, knowing laughter rippled through the room again, but it was quiet, almost reverent. Anna smiled, blinking back emotion she hadn't expected to feel in a municipal court. Caprio turned back to her citation and tapped it with his pen. "This is a technical violation, no doubt," he said. "But it's also one of those moments where the law and justice aren't quite the same thing." He paused, then nodded to himself. "I'm dismissing this citation, and I'll be making a call to the city council later this week about their definition of real-world feasibility." Anna looked stunned. "Thank you, Your Honor." Caprio smiled. "Don't thank me. Thank yourself for showing up, for doing the work, and for parking badly for all the right reasons." The courtroom burst into soft applause. Judge Caprio adjusted his posture slightly, his warm gaze settling on Anna. The mood in the courtroom had shifted. What started as a light-hearted traffic case had turned into something else entirely. He set his pen down gently on the bench, folding his hands. "Anna," he said, his voice softer now, "I want to ask you something. Why push so hard for this project? I mean, this is just a parking ticket. You don't have to explain everything to me." Anna hesitated. Her hands tightened slightly on the edges of the wooden podium. For a moment, it seemed she might say nothing. Then she looked up, her voice barely above a whisper. "I lost my younger brother in a tenement fire, Your Honor," she said, her eyes fixed on a distant memory. "He was 11. A hush fell over the courtroom. Even the quiet hum of the ceiling fan seemed to fade. Anna continued, her words slow but steady. "There was no fire alarm, no working extinguishers. The landlord had cut corners for years. Old wiring, cheap materials. That building never stood a chance." She paused, swallowing hard. "We lived on the second floor. My brother's room was closest to the kitchen. When the fire started, we couldn't get to him." Judge Caprio's expression changed. The warmth in his eyes deepened, shadowed now by sorrow and reflection. "I'm very sorry for your loss," he said quietly. Anna nodded, her lips trembling into a faint, bitter smile. "It's been 9 years," she said. "He loved robots, you know. He used to draw blueprints in his notebooks. He said one day he'd build one that could cook breakfast and do his homework." There was a small ripple of emotion from the gallery, people shifting, blinking, some covering their mouths, others simply looking down. "I build them now," Anna said, her voice gaining strength. Not the breakfast ones, at least not yet, but I build robots for schools, and labs, and safety systems, for kids like him. I just wish I could do more." Judge Caprio leaned back slightly, his fingertips pressed together. For a long moment, he said nothing. The courtroom, often full of chatter and quiet jokes, was utterly still. Even the bailiff looked down, eyes blinking faster than usual. In that silence, something shifted. The usual boundaries of courtroom and audience blurred. No one was thinking about fines anymore, or parking zones, or flashing hazard lights. They were thinking about a little boy who had drawn dreams in his notebooks, and the sister who was still trying to bring those dreams to life. Then, just as Judge Caprio opened his mouth to respond, the courtroom door creaked open at the back. The sound broke the silence like a crack of thunder. All heads turned. A tall figure stepped inside, dressed in black, his presence unfamiliar but commanding. He didn't belong to the usual parade of defendants or reporters. It was Elon Musk, and with him, everything was about to change. The heavy wooden door at the back of the courtroom suddenly burst open with a loud creak, drawing every eye in the room. The bailiff stepped forward instinctively. "Sir, you can't—" But the man who entered walked with quiet confidence, his presence unmistakable. Elon Musk. Wearing a black jacket, calm but with purpose in his eyes, he strode straight toward the front, stopping beside Anna's bench. "She's telling the truth," he said firmly, his voice carrying through the stunned courtroom. "And this court needs to listen." A ripple of murmurs spread through the gallery. Even the reporters in the back lowered their phones, momentarily stunned into silence. Judge Caprio narrowed his eyes, gripping the edge of the bench. "Mr. Musk, you can't just walk into my courtroom like this." "Then charge me," Elon replied, unfazed. "But I'm here because this woman's project, Anna's project, it works. My foundation quietly funded a pilot program in Detroit. 2 months ago, one of her AI sensor systems caught a gas leak in a housing complex on the east side. A family of 6 lived there. They survived because her tech worked." Anna turned to him, her lips parted in shock. She had no idea. Elon reached into his pocket and pulled out a small flash drive, holding it up like a piece of evidence. The weight of what he was about to say settled over the room like a blanket. "And the real reason she didn't get the Providence grant?" he continued. "It wasn't about feasibility. It was politics. This drive contains internal emails and documents showing that the contract bidding was rigged. The city awarded the tech grant to a fake shell company, with direct ties to Councilman Drexler." A gasp broke from the audience. Judge Caprio's brows furrowed sharply. "Mr. Musk," he said, his tone darkening, "I'm warning you." "I'm not here to cause a scene," Elon said, his tone steady. "But I will not sit back while a good woman's work is buried because someone at City Hall wanted to hand out favors." The courtroom screens, usually used for traffic cam footage or case evidence, suddenly flickered to life. One by one, images appeared. Leaked emails, budget allocations, chat messages, a contract signed off under a false name. Then, bold and unmistakable in an internal document. "Ensure Drexler's firm gets this bid." The room sat in stunned silence. Even the bailiff had stopped moving. Anna stared at the screen, her hands trembling. She looked up at Caprio, whose face had gone pale. He stared at the screen for a long moment, jaw tightening. Then, slowly, Judge Caprio stood. "Bailiff," he said, his voice low and shaken. "Recess. I need 5 minutes." Without another word, he turned and walked out of the courtroom. Not a gavel drop, not a closing statement, just the soft echo of his footsteps. And the entire room left wondering what kind of storm had just begun. 15 minutes passed, but it felt like hours. The courtroom remained silent, murmurs suppressed under the weight of uncertainty. Reporters huddled near the back whispered into phones, courtroom artists paused mid-sketch, and Anna stood motionless, her hands still trembling, the flash drive Elon had brought resting on the clerk's desk like a live wire. Then the door creaked open again. Judge Frank Caprio returned. His steps were deliberate, his expression unreadable. But there was a new weight in his eyes, a depth of disappointment, perhaps even quiet anger, not at Anna nor the disruption, but at a betrayal of trust that went deeper than a traffic infraction. He took his seat slowly, folded his hands before him, and looked across the room. The courtroom fell completely still. "Ms. Delgado," he said finally, his voice composed but firm, "your parking ticket is dismissed. That's the easy part." A faint wave of relieved laughter bubbled up, but it died as he continued. "As for the rest, what I saw on those screens isn't just troubling, it's a disgrace. I'm formally recommending that an ethics investigation be launched into the grant selection process. I will also be forwarding this case to the State Attorney General's office. No one, no innovator, no citizen should have to fight this hard or this quietly to save lives." Applause broke out in the gallery. Not loud, not rowdy, just a rising chorus of hands that echoed the gratitude and relief shared by many in the room. Even the bailiff, usually stone-faced, offered a small nod in Anna's direction. Judge Caprio turned back to Anna, his voice softening. "Keep building those robots," he said gently. "Your brother would be proud." Anna's eyes welled. Her hands flew to her face for a moment before she brought them down and whispered, "Thank you. Thank you so much." She wasn't smiling. She was something deeper than that, relieved, seen, vindicated. Then Caprio shifted his gaze to Elon Musk, who stood casually with his arms crossed. "And Mr. Musk," Caprio said, arching an eyebrow, "next time, follow protocol." A beat passed. Elon smirked, hands sliding into his pockets. "Next time, I hope I won't need to." The audience broke into light laughter, the tension finally lifting, the mood cracking open like sunlight after a storm. Even Judge Caprio allowed the corner of his mouth to twitch upward. What began as a routine parking ticket had unraveled a city scandal and reminded everyone in that courtroom what justice, real justice, was supposed to look like. Anna glanced down at the flash drive, then toward the exit where her future now waited. She wasn't just an engineer anymore. She was a catalyst. In Judge Frank Caprio's courtroom, justice isn't about fines, it's about listening. Ana Delgado came in with a simple parking ticket and left having sparked a change far beyond what she imagined. And while rules matter, so does courage, the kind that speaks truth when it's hardest to hear. If this story moved you, share it. Comment below with your thoughts and where you're watching from. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories from the court where compassion meets the law. Because sometimes, justice needs a little push.